To those who are expecting a hero in this story, I hate to break it to you, but there will be no young wolf to stop Siva, no slayer of Crota to defeat Oryx, no hero of the Red War to shatter Gaul. This is a story without the light, only the deep. Howdy everyone, I'm the Shadow of the Hawk, and I apologize for that little edgy bit of foreshadowing, or spoiler, whichever will you want to take it. And, as you can tell by the video, I am dropping the Hive from Destiny into the Dragon Prince, more specifically south of the city of Catolis, the day of Runan's attack. Because this is a Dragon Prince video, I imagine people know what those words mean, but most people probably don't know who the Hive are. So, let's give a little bit of a talk about who they are, and this will not be a super in-depth video talking about things like who the Taken King is, what is the Osmium Throne, where is Fundament. Rather, this will be just the combat effectiveness of different members of the Hive, lower level members of the Hive more specifically, nothing higher than a yellow bar, and yeah, let's jump right into it. To start, let's go with what will be the leader of this little expedition, let's call it. That'll be a Hive Wizard. Now, the Hive Wizards are the female cast of the Hive. These are your schemers, plotters, magic users, as well as, well, the mothers of the Hive. Wizards are, well, a joke, in my personal assessment, unless they're a strike boss or a raid challenge. They are, in no way, shape, or form, any sort of threat. They have these little barrier shields that when you empty an energy weapon into, go. And then they are fairly frail and weak, as they're not frontline combatants. That is, as a guardian. A normal human will probably struggle, as wizards like to float above the ground. They have that pesky little magical shield I mentioned, as well as being able to shoot bursts of energy that will probably atomize a normal human being like that. Next up are the knights, and we technically have two kinds of knights here. We got the normal shock troops, as well as a prince knight. Prince knights are the ones who start broods, have kids, and due to that, they become naturally stronger than their brothers, because the way the sword logic likes to work. Long story short, imagine feudalism, but with power instead of wealth. So the prince knight is going to be stronger, but he's not going to be much stronger. He'll probably have like another 2 feet on his brothers, and would probably be a mini boss you run into running around. Like for those of you who have played Destiny, it would be one of those bosses that you go kill and it drops a box. If any of that makes sense. For those of you who don't know Destiny, I just want you to imagine in the fictional story, in a fairy tale of some kind, this would be the rival, if you would, of the main character. Think Bolg from the Hobbit movies. Now, what could you expect from a knight? Well, knights are, as stated previously, tough bastards. You can just hit them, and hit them, and hit them, and they will probably create a wall of absolute darkness that you cannot break through, that they will use to heal them. Not much, but you'll have to waste another mag putting them down, and it's kind of annoying. They can also shoot jets of fire, or rather, solar energy. There's a difference. And they can hurt a bit. If you get into melee range and they have a sword, that's going to hurt. And if you stay out in the open and they hit you with one of their guns, that's going to hurt. Remember, that's as a guardian, boosted up with light, not really having an effective nervous system as you are a corpse. A normal human, oh boy. That's not going to go well for you. Not in the slightest. Next up, we got the Acolytes. Acolytes are a bit more down-to-earth for humans to fight. They have one-handed little pistol-like weapons, pew-pew, that can either totally disintegrate or totally immolate a target that gets hit. They can conjure little grenades of solar energy, and they have some pretty tough carapaces, I would imagine. I imagine you couldn't just whack at it with a sword. You'd probably need to go for a gap in the armor. Finally, we have the Hive Thralls. These are probably the best chance that a human being has at fighting the Hive. They are fast, but lightly armored organisms with no eyes and just pure savagery. I imagine a decently equipped medieval human soldier could take one in a one-on-one scrap. More than one, though. And, oh, by the way, that soldier's probably no longer combat capable, as if you let a Thrall get close enough to hit you, it will take a chunk out of you. And, newsflash, the Catolans kinda let things get a little too close to them, as I will get into in a minute. But before that, we need to talk numbers. How many wizards, knights, acolytes, and thralls will there be? Well, I feel like a breeding pair is an acceptable number. So we'll do a single wizard, a single prince knight. Now, how many normal knights, acolytes, and thralls will there be? Okay, so we're going to have 4 knights, 12 acolytes, and 48 thralls. Ignore the noise you just heard in the background. That was not me making this up on the spot. And for the last bit, and this doesn't really matter, we need to talk about the sect. See, the Hive operate in sects, which are typically rooted in the bloodline of the Hive god that they are born from. However, different broods or sects can come from the same Hive god. For example, the blood of Oryx and the Silent Brood are both of the bloodline of Oryx, the Taken King. However, they serve 2 completely different purposes. The blood of Oryx seem to be just the standard fighters of the Taken King's forces, whereas the Silent Brood are specifically used to keep Alakul, the Darkblade, locked in his box. So for this fight, we will be using the Silent Brood because I like their color scheme. It's nice. And what happens? Well, the Hive ship crashes, and the Hive would immediately be drawn to the fact that, hey, there's a city there. Let's go do Hive things. What are Hive things, you might ask? Ask the people on the moon. Ask Eris Morn's friends. I mean, you can't. They're all dead. Okay. What would happen is brutal and absolute carnage. Thralls would swarm into the city streets, ripping and tearing people apart like the Doomslayer goes through demons. The Acolytes would pew, 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 and kill people. The Knights would probably break through buildings, and the Thralls would run in through the holes and kill people. While the Wizard stays at a safe distance, because they're probably worried about stirring up Guardians, because where there are humans, there's a good likelihood of seeing Guardians. But there are no Guardians. There is no light. There is only the deep in these lands. Harrow, hearing about the scary monsters attacking the town, will probably rally his forces to go fight them. Due to how brutal the fighting is, I imagine Viren would also bring along Claudia to help. And here is the part where I'm probably going to anger a lot of members of the TDP fandom, but, yeah, the Catolans only take a few of the Thralls with them. Maybe an Acolyte. Even with dark magic support. Why do I say this? Well, first of all, the Catolans are morons when it comes to medieval combat tactics. For one, they have never once made use of spears or any sort of longbow or crossbow formations. At all. Even the battle where Viren is throwing his soldiers into a formation fight, there's no signs of any use of bows and crossbows. And to some of you, you might argue, well, they're not intelligent enough to make use of such technology. That's false. We see them managing ballistas to bring down dragons. So there is a level of intellect there. They also understand the concept of surrender. So there is, again, a level of intellect there. Meaning, they should have understood the concept of bow or crossbow, and the fact that they did not make use of either weapon shows that they aren't that they're not a part of the military doctrine. Same with horses. Before that, we never see any sort of armored cavalry being utilized by any sort of human kingdom. So there are also no cavalry to support the Catolans in this fight. We also have never seen any of the human kingdoms make use of any sort of close shield walls or tight formation fighting, so they also don't make use of that. Finally, as stated previously, they do not make use of any sort of polearm, or what Total War fans would call Total War Warhammer fans would call anti-large. Halberds, pikes, spears, billhooks. Something that you can use to keep the opponent from hitting you while you hit them. The Catolans don't make use of any of those. They make use of swords and shields. So they would be charging into the Hive with swords and shields. Getting into the range of a Thrall will lead to them getting ripped to pieces. Charging at an Acolyte with an unenchanted shield, unenchanted steel armor, and an unenchanted steel sword, you will be shot to death before you get close. And even if you do get close, I'm willing to bet that an Acolyte is stronger than a normal human, so much so that they could probably kill you with a punch. A Knight will absolutely kill you with a single hit. I will be fair and nice and say that the Knights, only one of them makes use of a ranged attack, and we will have that Knight use a boomer. That just means there are 4 Knights, including a Prince Knight, wading through Catolan soldiers, massacring them. Odds are, Harrow would have ordered the people to flee into the castle, and he and his men would be creating a shield line, or as close to one as they could do. As stated previously, they don't actually make shield lines. A wall to try to block these monsters. All they would be doing is being the sheep that corral themselves to the wolves. They would be massacred. The Prince Knight and his wizard would tear down that gate and charge in. Catullus would fall. A few spatterings of refugees would escape and flee out into the countryside, where they probably would run. Someone might be smart enough to run and flee to Amaya. But every single person in that castle is dead. There is no time to flee, and any sort of secret passage will be traced, as the Thralls are well, they're not intelligent, but they have really good senses. They will seek out people who are not defended by the light, and they will be massacred. Callum, Ezrin, Claudia, Sorin, Harrow, dead. Runon, if he's smart, will not engage. He will leave. He will inform the other elves of the situation. Dragons will patrol the boundary. Nothing much else changes there. But for the human kingdoms, something does change. Catullus has fallen. With Catullus having fallen, all military command would go to Amaya, as she is not only a general, but she is also effectively the last remaining member of the Catolan royal family, at least with the blood lineage that we have to work with within the show. What does she do? She musters up what she can, remaining of Catullus' forces, and sends out requests to the other kingdoms for aid. Because this is a tangible threat that has not only killed the king of Catullus, but is also still within the human kingdoms and would probably actively be massacring people, they would listen. Now here's where something gets interesting. How many soldiers can the human kingdoms raise? If anyone is interested in my method, just leave in the comments down below. I will provide it, but it is kind of boring. Needless to say, the numbers I managed to acquire were around 2,600 melee combatants, and around 520 archer combatants. The archers are specifically coming from Durin. That is around a little over 3,000 soldiers against, let's call it a wizard, 5 knights, 11 acolytes, and we'll be nice and say they killed about 28 thralls. Or is it 28 thralls? I hate myself so much for doing this. I did the math to figure out how long it would take a thrall to become combat capable, and no matter what I did, assuming that a thrall, the moment it hatches, the moment it consumes a worm, it is immediately combat capable, it's about a month and a half. Given how quickly Ezrin and Callum and Raylo were able to move on foot from Catullus to the mountains, assuming there was not months of passage of time, which I assume there wouldn't be, as that kind of thing would have been addressed, it was probably only a couple of weeks. I imagine that the armies of humanity could be gathered and readied and sent to fight Catullus before the first thralls hatch. It would be days, maybe even a week before they hatch, but it would be before they hatch. So the Hive have what they have. What do they do with it? They make merry murder. That's what they do. The Hive are not animals, as much as they would appear. They are crafty. They are intelligent. They can go to earth, or they can go to ground for decades, if need be, for centuries. But they won't need to do that here, for there is no light, only the deep. The armies of the human kingdoms will march on Catullus and find the city barren. They will find the castle damaged, ransacked, seemingly, with bodies displayed everywhere. Depending on whether or not the Hive actually need to consume sustenance, I could not find anything that confirmed nor denied the need for it. If you know anything about that, please leave it in the comments. But all that really determines is, are the bodies mutilated in the sense that they were eaten, or are they mutilated in the sense that they were killed horrifically? There would be a search that would find the lower levels teeming with these monsters, and the parties that go down there die. Cutting the Catullans some slack, I would imagine they have the concept of boiling oil, and would have some in the castle. Amaya would have it fetched, would have it boiled, and have it poured down to the dungeon. Some Thralls might get some burns, a couple Acolytes might sting their eyes, but the knights will charge up those stairs, and there will be bloodshed. Among the first casualties will be Amaya. She would be the tip of the spear, a spear that is not strong enough to break the resolve or the armor of the Hive. The Prince Knight would probably cleave her in half with a single strike, and before anyone could respond, the immediate group behind her would be ripped to pieces. Humans would either be fleeing out of instinct or standing still in shock. That's what the second part of the trap tricks. A tunnel would open up towards the entrance of the castle. Thralls, Acolytes, and the wizard herself would team out. Caught unprepared, out of formation, with a force with heavily advanced ranged weaponry and immense magical potential, the human army would be massacred. And this time, there are no dark mages to even make this a possible defense. And why do I say no dark mages? Well, because none of the other human courts had dark mages, or seemed to mention having dark mages, and they did not ride to war with Viren. I would imagine they would take the chance to if they were any bit as sociopathic as Viren was. Also, I do not know if there are any other dark mages, so we're going to assume that none went with the human armies here. What does this mean? It means the Hive win. They catch the armies of humanity between a force of knights and a wizard and her brood, and they push and push and push. Those who survive would flee. Their regions would fortify their borders, and Catullus would be left to face monsters. Monsters that would sit and wait and kill anyone stupid enough to go into Catullus. Monsters that would, within a decade or two, fade to legend in the other kingdoms. They were a thing, but they're not going to come. They're a boogeyman in the night. But no one would go into Catullus, except the foolish or the brave. And then one night you would be awoken to the screaming of children, the baying of dogs, and the massacre of a village. Knights, acolytes, ogres, thralls would slaughter everyone. Within a generation, the human kingdoms would be burned, razed, salted. All of it gone. And that would mean Zadia is the only place left. Did I just say Zadia? I meant the eastern part of the continent. Thrall. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, let me know down in the comments down below. If you hated this video, leave a dislike. Leave a comment explaining why you hated it. I will try to keep the dislike counter up to date. Thank you, YouTube, for making me have to do extra work. Yeah, if you thought this was good content, if you enjoyed the rest of my content, this is going to sound shill, but leave a sub. Not because I value internet numbers, but just because I want to use the community tab function. It looks really, really cool. I want to use it. I need 1,000 subs for that. Please have a good day. Bye.